Walking into the Aspen Grove Resort, I felt everything tighten in my chest. The air was thick, rich with the scent of rain outside, mixed with expensive perfume and the faint rustle of silk. The lobby's chandelier above shimmered like a crown in Versailles, bright, gaudy, mocking. My plain navy dress felt like a target under that glow, a stark contrast to the flash of gowns and suits just steps away. Everyone inside seemed to glow, effortless, successful, like they belonged. I could hear the distant hum of laughter, glasses clinking, applause, like memories echoing from a past I'd never quite catch up to. Why did everything change? Why did I feel so invisible? The cool touch of loneliness prickled as I moved forward, clutching my clutch tighter. The concierge handed me the name tag, Rebecca Cole, in bland serif font. No titles, no status. Just my name, plain and unremarkable. Still, I slipped the West Point ring from my sleeve, hiding it from view, holding on to the part of me no one else saw. But no one needed to see. The ballroom opened like a stage. Long ivory tables, flowers tangled with crystals, extravagance woven into every detail. A 6-tier cake glistened under soft lights. On the big screen, a slideshow flickered, memories of prom, debate club, trips to D.C., with Chloe, my sister, already on stage, commanding the room. Her power dress matched her voice, clear, confident. After 15 years at the Department of Justice, I've been appointed Deputy Director for Western Cyber Oversight, she announced, tossing her hair with that effortless smile. But I'll never forget where I started, right here at Jefferson High. She wasn't just proud, she owned her success. Me? I found myself at a far-off table, table 14, near the buffet, close to the exit, where the names in gold-embossed paper felt worlds away from this glamour. I watched her, feeling like a ghost, trying to find my place in a room that seemed to forget I ever belonged. How do you stand tall when you feel so small? How do you find worth amidst so much silence? Tonight, I realized, sometimes being humble doesn't mean hiding. It means holding on to who you are, even when the world insists you're nothing. And maybe, just maybe, I'd open that door again, step into the light, not to impress, but to prove that even in quiet, we can still shine. The room was thick with a silence that felt deafening. I sat there, nibbling cautiously on half-eaten shrimp cocktail, the cool seafood momentarily grounding me amid the noise. Across the glittering ballroom, Ethan Harris Hart spotted me. Still tall, still smug, like he hadn't changed a bit. He weaved through the crowd, suit perfectly pressed, a smirk that refused to age. He leaned in, voice smooth but slightly mocking. "Becca," he said, "or are you pushing paper in Kansas now?" I forced a tight smile. "Nice to see you too, Ethan Harris." He chuckled, dismissing. "Come on, I'm joking. But seriously, didn't you study pre-law?" My heart squeezed. What happened? Before I could answer, a woman in pearls leaned toward another guest, her voice loud enough to echo. Didn't she drop out of law school? Shame. So much potential. I caught Melissa Jung's faint smile from across 3 tables. Was it pity? Or solidarity? Probably both. The dinner crowd moved like clockwork. Waiters in sync, serving prime rib and scalloped potatoes. Chloe, ever glowing, stopped by with theatrical hugs and bright teeth. "Glad you could make it," she said, tilting her head. "In that navy vintage, you look different." "It's just a dress," I said softly. "Well, you've always been practical," she smiled knowingly. "We should talk sometime. You've got stories, I'm sure." "Only the quiet ones," I murmured. Ethan Harris returned, flanked by classmates. One, a tanned woman in a pale blue suit, squinted. "Wait, were you in the Army?" "That's right, left after sophomore year to enlist or something." A man behind her burst out laughing. "You? Army? Like a clerk? Or a sergeant?" Heads turned. Some laughed, some stared. Ethan Harris looked amused. Chloe said nothing. I sipped water, steadying my trembling hand. The air grew dense like gravity had shifted inside the room, but I refused to fall. Instead, I looked up, meeting their eyes with quiet defiance, knowing their judgments didn't define me. They were fools for pretending to know my worth. I wasn't invisible anymore, just quietly resilient. And maybe that was enough. I stood up, my heart racing, and adjusted the sleeve that concealed my West Point ring. I met their gazes with a calm I'd forged over 2 decades in war rooms and underground bunkers. A faint smile crossed my lips as I muttered something vague, then slipped away to the balcony. My encrypted phone pinged silently, a reminder of the life they couldn't see. To them, I was just a nobody in a discount dress. But they didn't know I had once briefed NATO in that same outfit, hidden beneath a military coat they'd never imagined existed. The wind curled around the balcony as if trying to eavesdrop on my thoughts. I lingered there, my back straight, eyes fixed on the dark treetops swaying above the golf course. The resort lights bled gold into the grass, creating a stark contrast to the chaos inside. Here, where no one cared to stand, it was quiet, a rare kind of quiet in my world. Inside, the clamor of success stories swelled again. Laughter, toasts, and another slideshow flickered to life. Chloe with the debate team. Chloe in front of the White House. Chloe at Harvard. The door behind me opened with a hiss. Ethan Harris. "There you are," he said, already halfway through his next scotch. "You always did like standing on the edge of things." I didn't respond. He leaned against the railing, too close for comfort. "You know," he began, his voice casual, "you really used to have a future. Valedictorian, debate team prodigy. Harvard Law practically begging for you, and then poof, Army." He laughed, a sound that hadn't changed. Same clipped arrogance. Same need to feel one step ahead. It pulled me back to that last moment we shared, senior year. The dorm hallway still smelled like burnt coffee and laundry soap. I had told him I'd accepted West Point. "You're kidding," he had said, his jaw tightening. "The military? You're throwing this away." "It's not throwing away," I had replied, my voice steady. "It's choosing something bigger." "Yeah," he snapped, "bigger than me." And then he walked out. No goodbye, no call, just vanished. But tonight I wouldn't let his words define me. I wouldn't let anyone's judgments shape my worth. As I stood there, the laughter from inside faded, replaced by the rustle of leaves and the scent of rain in the air. I was more than their assumptions. I was quietly resilient. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. But then, a flicker of movement caught my eye. A shadow danced behind the window, and my phone buzzed again. An unread message blinked ominously on the screen. What did it mean? Was everything I'd worked for about to unravel? In the dim hallway of her high school reunion, Rebecca stands frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. The faint glow of banners casts sharp shadows across her face, highlighting the ache of feeling invisible among familiar faces. Her grip tightens on her small bag, memories swirling, moments of rejection, quiet despair, the weight of insignificance that's haunted her for years. She considers slipping out the side door, vanishing into the night, until a gentle hand brushes her shoulder. She turns sharply, eyes narrow with suspense. What's about to happen that could finally change everything? Will she find her voice, or stay lost in the shadows? She's navigated decades of feeling overlooked, building resilience in silence. Yet here she is again, facing a crossroads. A single touch, a whispered moment. Could this be her chance? The night suddenly thickens with questions. Who's reaching out? Why now? Her mind races. Might this be the moment she claims her worth? Or is she destined to remain unseen? The echo of laughter from inside grows distant, replaced by the rustle of leaves and the scent of rain, reminding her that transformation often begins in silence. As she stands there, caught between fear and hope, the next choice could reshape her story forever. What will she do? The ballroom buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses, but for Rebecca, it felt like a world away. She stepped back inside, heart racing as the atmosphere shifted. Groups formed, drinks flowed, and the air thickened with loose tongues and unspoken judgments. At the edge of the crowd, she spotted Melissa, nursing a glass of wine, her eyes scanning the room. "That was painful," Melissa murmured, her voice low. Rebecca managed a faint smile. "Which part?" "All of it," she replied, then added, "You look better than them all, by the way." Rebecca chuckled softly. "I doubt they'd agree." "Doesn't matter. Truth doesn't need a majority vote." In that moment, Rebecca felt a flicker of gratitude. Melissa didn't rush to fill the silence. She simply observed. Across the room, Chloe leaned in close to Ethan, whispering something that made him laugh. When their eyes met, Chloe didn't look away. She just smiled, a confident glimmer that stung. "Didn't she used to follow you around like a shadow?" Melissa asked, breaking the spell. "She learned to outshine me instead," Rebecca replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Before Melissa could respond, a gentle hand touched Rebecca's shoulder. She turned sharply, her heart pounding. It was Mr. Walters, her old history teacher. He looked older, grayer, but those sharp eyes were still the same. "Miss Cole," he said warmly, "I was hoping you'd be here. I heard about your military service." "Thank you, Mr. Walters," she replied, surprised. "You wrote a paper on asymmetric warfare in my class," he continued, a hint of pride in his voice. "I still remember it. Brilliant work." Rebecca blinked, the memory flooding back. That paper had been a late-night act of defiance, born from tears shed after a call with Ethan. "I remember," she said softly, her voice trembling. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "Tell me, did you ever serve in Ghost Viper? I've heard things." They thought she had vanished into obscurity. In truth, she had disappeared into national silence. As she locked the hotel room door behind her, she exhaled slowly, letting the buzz of the reunion fade into a distant hum. The room was unassuming. Faux crystal lamps, cream-colored carpet, a folded bathrobe on the bed. It could belong to anyone. But tonight, it belonged to her. The night air clung heavy with rain scent outside the hotel window. Inside, I moved silently, heels slipping off with a soft whisper. I crossed the room, my heart pounding like a distant drum. Beneath a navy dress bag, hidden behind the clutter, lay what I'd kept locked away, the one thing that kept me waking up each day with purpose. I reached for the black shell case, unmarked and cold to the touch. Flicking open the latches, a faint blue glow spilled out, illuminating my face and hands. Fingerprint, retinal, voice, all verified. "Cole, Rebecca, clearance Echo 5, I whispered, voice trembling. A soft chime signaled secure comms online. Data flooded the screen. Threats, protocols, the status of Project Merlin. 4 red zones, 2 internal threats, a breach point matching the blueprint I'd memorized. Suddenly, an incoming call from Cyber Command. I hesitated. His face appeared, looking exhausted, jaw clenched, eyes shadowed. "Ma'am," he said, hurried, "things have shifted. They want your eyes on the Merlin intercepts, now." I didn't blink. My mind flashed to DC. The stakes had just doubled. NATO's compromised. Phoenix files had leaked. They needed me back. Fast. But something else was pulsing on the map. A 5th breach, alive and growing. The room seemed to close in around me. "I can't leave yet," I whispered, voice steady despite the chaos. Silence stretched. Then the voice cut through again. "You've got 48 hours, he said. "After that, we do what we have to do." The call ended, leaving a cold hum in the air. I sat there, eyes fixed on the glowing map. The hum of the case was no longer just noise. It was a heartbeat, a reminder I was still needed, still in the game. Outside, the rain continued to fall. Inside, I felt the weight of everything I'd fought for, and the unknown that waited on the other side of that next moment. Would I be ready when it arrived? The screen flashed again. A new secure message on the way. Pentagon Forward Liaison. Subject urgent. Standing Authority update line. Direct extraction possible if urgent. You're the fulcrum. I closed the message. I already knew what it meant. If Merlin collapsed and the intel leak spread to civilian grids, it wouldn't matter whether I was dancing in a ball gown or kneeling in a war room. I would be pulled out. The fulcrum wasn't a title. It was a tether. I stood stretched, then walked to the window. Outside, the lights of Aspen Grove still sparkled like a painting too polished to be real. I could hear music again, soft jazz now, followed by a DJ's voice booming something about a class slideshow. 20 years ago, I'd sat in that auditorium with Ethan Harris, Chloe, and Melissa, listening to our valedictorian speak about legacy. I remember clapping politely, even smiling for the yearbook photo. I never imagined my legacy would be silence. 15 years ago, Ghost Viper deployed on a mission so sensitive, we burned every scrap of planning material afterward. We succeeded, but at a cost. 3 agents never came home. Their names didn't make the news. I gave the final go order on that op. I was the youngest to do so. No medal, no citation, just a single line in an encrypted server operation completed. No attribution. Debrief sealed indefinitely. I carried those silences like medals no one could pin. Now they needed me again. I turned from the window and began to pack. Not much, just the case. 2 devices and a dress uniform folded beneath a false bottom panel in my suitcase. My fingers lingered on the coat sleeve where a single silver star rested just above the cuff. I didn't plan to wear it yet. Not until I was ready. I have one thing left to settle before I leave. 48 hours. Outside music from the reunion resumes. I look out and murmur, "One last night in the shadows." I wore no medals, but I carried more scars than anyone in that ballroom. The grand ballroom shimmered under a ceiling scattered with thousands of broken glass, each shard catching the light like tiny stars. Golden specks danced over polished tables, glinting off champagne flutes, an illusion of celebration, but something more layered beneath. The room pulsed with rehearsed nostalgia, with a kind of curated success, everyone seemingly playing a role they'd waited 20 years to step into. The class of 2003 looked different now, aged into sharp power suits, their smiles practiced and wide. I lingered near the back, at table 14, flanked by 2 former varsity swimmers turned venture capitalists and a woman whose Beverly Hills skincare empire must have cost a fortune. No one remembered my name. Not surprising. They smiled politely, then turned back to their conversations. I didn't mind. Safer this way, staying quiet in the corner. The band quieted. The MC, a balding guy with a booming voice who'd been the prom DJ, grabbed the mic, and then our highlight was announced. The 2003 Most Distinguished Alumni Award. They voted unanimously this year. "She's smart, accomplished, rising star in federal service," the MC boomed. "Please welcome Deputy Director Chloe Cole." The applause thundered. Chloe moved to the stage like she'd been carved out of victory itself. Her scarlet dress caught the spotlight, commanding every eye. She grabbed the mic with both hands, taking a breath, her gaze scanning the room. Then she spoke. "Thank you all. I'm honored, a little stunned." Her voice resonated, confident but humble. "I mean, I'm just doing my job." Silence held for a moment. Over time, you see who rises, who leads, and who just watches from the wings. Pauses. She didn't look at me, but somehow I felt her eyes, like she knew exactly what I was feeling. She continued, "I want to thank my mentors, my team at the DOJ, and especially my high school teachers, those who encouraged ambition over conformity." Her words hovered in the air. They taught me that serving is admirable, but leading, that's where real change happens. Applause rippled again. Then she added, almost softly, "I think we all know someone who chooses to fade into the background, and that's okay. Not everyone wants or can handle the light." I sat still, feeling the weight of her words as the room erupted in applause again. But in me, a different feeling stirred, the quiet ache of invisibility. The truth is, I'd never been one to seek the spotlight. I'd always kept my head down, played my role, survived. But tonight, no medals, no trophies, just the hollow echo of a yearbook smile. Then, the unexpected. As the applause swelled, a knot tightened in my stomach. Chloe took a step back, smiling, as though she knew something no one else did. Outside, the faint scent of rain drifted in, and somewhere a leaf rustled, silent in the dim glow. All eyes were on her, on the stage, on her triumph. But beneath it all, I wondered, what comes next? And just as I started to breathe again, the MC's voice cut through, sharp and sudden. "Now, a surprise announcement that will change everything." My heart lurched. What could it be? As I stepped into the dim hallway, the laughter from the banquet faded into a haunting echo. The cool air wrapped around me like a shroud, intensifying the weight pressing down on my chest. My skin prickled with nerves as I caught sight of Melissa across the room, her eyes fixed on me, but not with the pity I feared. No, this was something sharper. Disbelief, maybe even judgment. Like she saw right through me, past the forced smiles and polished facades. Ethan Harris, a few tables over, lifted his glass, declaring, "Our own Iron Lady. Proof that leading from the front beats hiding in the shadows, unless you're peeling potatoes on a base in Nebraska." The laugh that followed felt hollow, a reminder of how easily people hide behind jokes. Chloe, smiling modestly, looked overwhelmed, the toast wrapping around her like a shield. But Melissa didn't clap. She bit her lip, quiet, knowing something I didn't. The room erupted again with applause, but my focus was on Melissa and that strange, unreadable expression. I wondered, what does she see in me tonight? Was it pity or something else? The air seemed to shift, the distant hum of voices blending with the faint scent of rain drifting through open windows. I rose quietly, heels silent on the plush carpet. Nobody noticed. Ethan Harris's voice called after me. "Hey, Rebecca, wait!" But I kept moving. I needed to be alone. The hallway was cooler, darker, far from the curated memories flooding the ballroom. Past framed photos of high school plays, awards nights. It all felt like distant echoes of who I once was. Outside, the night was velvet black, stars piercing through the quiet like distant signals. I took a breath, the coolness settling in my lungs. My encrypted phone buzzed in my clutch. Red light on the screen. Extraction cleared. Helipad, ETA, 6 minutes. They said I amounted to nothing, that my life was just ordinary. But then, a strange tremor vibrated through the ground beneath me. I stood near the edge of the lawn, past the fairy lights and the whispered conversations. The starry sky above me, so familiar, so distant, made me remember. The nights overseas, maps lit by moonlight, silence thick with danger, hope flickering like distant stars fading in the dawn. For a moment, I tilted my head up, watching the sky, and I wondered, what comes next? What if everything I've been told is wrong? The night was quiet, almost too quiet. And just as my heart started to settle, a sudden, almost imperceptible shift in the darkness made me freeze. What was that? Behind me, the echoes of the reunion lingered in the air. Chloe's acceptance speech, Ethan Harris's wine-soaked joke, the MC's final laugh. In their eyes, I had already exited the story, unimportant, forgotten. I once told Melissa years ago, I don't need them to clap, I just need them to see. But I never imagined that moment would arrive like this. The wind shifted, carrying a low rumble that started soft, barely distinguishable from the hum of generators and distant traffic. But it grew. Waiters paused mid-step. Someone looked up. A few guests glanced around, puzzled. Then the lights on the grass flickered, white dots replaced by harsh beams from above. A sound cracked through the air like thunder splitting sideways. Gasps erupted, trays dropped, glass shattered, napkins flew. From the northern tree line, a dark form emerged, angular, precise. A military helicopter, matte black, sliced through the sky with authority. Its rotors thundered as it hovered above the lawn lights blazing into the crowd. Screams of confusion filled the air. Phones shot up like flowers in spring. "What's happening?" someone yelled. A mother pulled her child close. Ethan Harris shielded his eyes. Chloe's champagne flute tilted, spilling gold down her dress. The helicopter began to descend, rotors kicking up a cyclone of leaves and petals. Guests stumbled back, hair and ties whipping in every direction. The string quartet fell silent, cameras flashing, not out of joy but confusion and fear. Then it landed. The door swung open. Colonel Marcus Ellison stepped out in full dress uniform, ribbons gleaming under the floodlight. His boots crunched on the gravel path as he crossed the lawn, head high, pace unhurried. He didn't glance at the crowd. His eyes were locked on one thing: me. I didn't move. I stood straight, arms at my sides, the wind tugging gently at my navy dress. For the first time that night, I didn't feel underdressed. I felt exactly as I needed to be. What was this moment? Was it a chance to reclaim my story, or just another twist in a life that felt so ordinary? The air thickened with tension, and I could feel the weight of every gaze on me. The world around me faded, leaving only the thrum of the rotors and the pounding of my heart. Was this the moment that would finally define me? I never imagined that moment would arrive like this. The wind shifted, carrying a low rumble that started soft, barely distinguishable from the hum of generators and distant traffic. But it grew. Waiters paused mid-step. Someone looked up. A few guests glanced around, puzzled. Then the lights on the grass flickered, white dots replaced by harsh beams from above. A sound cracked through the air like thunder splitting sideways. Gasps erupted, trays dropped, glass shattered, napkins flew. From the northern tree line, a dark form emerged, angular, precise. A military helicopter, matte black, sliced through the sky with authority. Its rotors thundered as it hovered above the lawn lights blazing into the crowd. Screams of confusion filled the air. Phones shot up like flowers in spring. "What's happening?" someone yelled. A mother pulled her child close. Ethan shielded his eyes. Chloe's champagne flute tilted, spilling gold down her dress. The helicopter began to descend, rotors kicking up a cyclone of leaves and petals. Guests stumbled back, hair and ties whipping in every direction. The string quartet fell silent, cameras flashing, not out of joy but confusion and fear. Then it landed. The door swung open. Colonel Marcus Ellison stepped out in full dress uniform, ribbons gleaming under the floodlight. His boots crunched on the gravel path as he crossed the lawn, head high, pace unhurried. He didn't glance at the crowd. His eyes were locked on one thing: me. I didn't move. I stood straight, arms at my sides, the wind tugging gently at my navy dress. For the first time that night, I didn't feel underdressed. I felt exactly as I needed to be. What was this moment? Was it a chance to reclaim my story, or just another twist in a life that felt so ordinary? The air thickened with tension, and I could feel the weight of every gaze on me. The world around me faded, leaving only the thrum of the rotors and the pounding of my heart. Was this the moment that would finally define me? Ellison stopped 3 feet away, squared his shoulders and saluted. Crisp, deliberate, impeccable. Then he spoke, his voice projected over the stunned silence. "Lieutenant General Cole. Ma'am, the Pentagon requires your presence. Immediate briefing." The words hit the air like a detonation. Someone gasped. Another dropped a phone. A wine glass shattered. I heard Ethan's voice behind me, barely above a whisper. No. What? Chloe stumbled back a step, her mouth frozen open, her eyes wide and glassy. Melissa was the first to move. She stepped forward, breath caught, then whispered just loud enough to carry, "Oh my God, Rebecca?" They all froze as Ellison said the words, "Lieutenant General Cole." I had never spoken my title aloud in public, but now it roared through the silence like thunder. The last vibrations of the helicopter blades rumbled through the earth like an aftershock. The air had gone still again, but not silent. This was the quiet of stunned disbelief, neurons failing to catch up to what eyes had just seen. Colonel Ellison handed me the folder, black and boss-sealed. His voice dropped just enough for only me to hear. "Target movement confirmed 2 hours ago. Pentagon wants eyes on intercept recommendations. Merlin's window is narrowing." I nodded once. "Anyone dead?" "Not yet, but that won't hold." From behind him, I heard Chloe's voice crack through the frozen silence. Wait, did he just say—" All eyes shifted to her. She stood barefoot now, having lost a heel in the chaos, clutching her clutch like a lifeline. Her dress sparkled beneath the floodlight, but her face was losing its sheen fast. "Rebecca," she repeated, voice rising, "you're in the military." "But I thought you thought I was peeling potatoes in Nebraska," I said calmly. Ethan stumbled forward, still gripping his wine glass like it might anchor him. I didn't know." He said, General, I had no idea. I thought you'd dropped out. Law school, West Point." The atmosphere shifted from disbelief to a complex mix of admiration and envy. The clinking of glasses and hushed whispers filled the air, punctuated by sharp intakes of breath from my former classmates. The weight of my hidden accomplishments hung heavy, transforming me from the overlooked wallflower to a figure of unexpected authority. The tension was palpable as the realization dawned that the girl they once knew had become a woman of power, challenging their perceptions of success and identity. The air thickened with tension as the crowd's murmurs swelled, each whisper a dagger aimed at Rebecca's heart. She could feel the weight of their gazes, a mix of curiosity and judgment. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows that danced around her, amplifying her isolation. Just as she opened her mouth to respond, a sudden silence fell, and all eyes turned to the entrance. A figure emerged, their presence electrifying the atmosphere. Who was it? The question hung in the air, heavy with anticipation, urging the audience to lean in closer. I didn't even... He trailed off as the cameras started flashing. Melissa stepped beside me, her hands trembling. "I don't understand how you hid this." "I wasn't hiding," I said. "I was serving." Somewhere in the crowd, someone started clapping. Just a few hands, then more. A ripple of confused, unsure applause rose and faded like an orchestra missing half its instruments, but it was enough. I took a step toward the center of the lawn, where voices had started to rise in whispers, questions, fragments of disbelief. I didn't speak loudly. I didn't have to. "Some people wear uniforms loudly," I said. "Others wear them quietly. That doesn't make us any less visible. It just means we serve without needing to be seen." Ellison gave a nod toward the helicopter. "Ma'am, ETA 1 minute." I turned to Melissa, her eyes shining now, not with pity or confusion, but with awe. "You really are the fulcrum," she whispered. I smiled faintly. Sometimes silence is a blade. "Becca, please can we talk?" Ethan Harris tried again. "I was wrong. I didn't see you." "That's the thing," I replied without turning. "You never tried to." Chloe stood off to the side, arms crossed, chest heaving. Her expression had frozen, not in embarrassment but calculation. As the crowd shifted, phones raised and whispers became captions. She quietly pulled out her own. One quick swipe, she opened her podcast app, tapped record. "This is Cole," she began in a low, controlled voice. "Live from Aspen Grove, where some very interesting truths are unfolding." Behind me, the rotors kicked up again. Ellison guided me to the helicopter and the ground fell away beneath my feet. As I climbed aboard, flashbulbs snapped, faces blurred beneath the growing cloud of wind and debris. Some still clapped, some stood frozen, some pulled out their phones. As we lifted off, I caught one last glimpse through the window. Chloe's eyes burned, still recording. What would happen next? Would the truth finally break through the facade? The crowd was left in stunned silence, and so was I. The second I stepped onto Pentagon ground, the internet exploded. Chloe's voice, sharp and unfiltered, was already echoing through my inbox. The secure door hissed shut behind me, sealing me inside that heavy silence. Inside the skiff, shadows seemed to press in tighter, thicker than the noise, thicker than the chaos I'd just left behind. Aspen Grove's digital cloud had vanished, replaced by cold concrete walls, muted lights, and the faint hum of threat matrices crawling across classified screens. I took off my jacket, shedding the remnants of reunion perfume. Here, it was sweat and urgency. Colonel Ellison briskly led me past rows of terminals, his voice low but steady. I was already scrolling through the data on the secure tablet he handed me. Logs from a breach near a Baltic server farm. Half-matched encryption markers, suspect disinformation clusters tagged Merlin. "General Monroe is waiting," he said. I didn't hesitate. We moved into the operations suite. At the far end, Monroe stood tall, ribbons weighing down his chest, eyes cold and unreadable. "Cole," he said, voice steady. "Got a minute?" "Always," I responded, trying to keep my tone even. He handed me another dossier. A projection flickered behind him, maps flashing, timelines crossing, hashtags pulsing. "Last 48 hours, Monroe said. "Pattern shows Merlin's breach patterns line up with a viral trend. Your name, blowing up civilians' feeds. Some podcast called My Sister the Myth just went crazy. It's already re-uploaded by a dozen alt-media channels." I stiffened. "Chloe." "Correct," Monroe confirmed. I could picture her. Her voice steady, yet cutting, meticulous. She's the girl who always knew how to push buttons, how to twist truths. I'd listened to her podcast before, how she'd joke about weaponizing rank and military narcissism. Now she was building her brand around it. Monroe continued, "She's accusing you of using your rank for validation." I felt the room tighten as his words sank in. My stomach clenched. Was this part of her game? Or was it something more? Outside, the unrelenting hum of power, the weight of the unseen war closing in. What comes next? Will Chloe's truth break free from the digital shadows? Or is this just another step deeper into the maze of secrets? The air thickened, pulse pounding. I knew one thing. Nothing. This loud stays quiet forever. Standing in the dim remnants of her high school gym, Rebecca Cole felt the weight of memories pressing down. The air was thick with that familiar scent. Old wood, faint varnish, a hint of rain outside, mixing with the scent of forgotten hopes. Laughter echoed somewhere across the room, distant and almost mockingly cheerful. She clutched her purse tightly, her fingers trembling just a little. Memories washed in. Her yearbook in her hands, the ink still fresh, promising friendships she never made, promises she barely remembered. The flickering fluorescent lights cast long shadows on her face, exposing every crack of insecurity she'd tried to hide. She remembered the girl who'd always stood on the sidelines, dreaming of acceptance, feeling invisible. Now, here she was again, eyes darting, feeling small. Is this what success feels like? Or just another version of being ignored? The ache of insignificance clenched her chest. Every laugh, every whisper in that distant corner, it all sounded like a world she'd left behind. Memories flickered, her past, her pain, her hope, entwined in a bittersweet tapestry. She wondered if anyone even saw her, truly saw her. She questioned everything, her worth, her place, her story. And yet, somehow, she stayed rooted, not to prove anything to them but to remind herself she was still here, not defeated, resilient, humble. It was a quiet rebellion, choosing dignity over acceptance, truth over silence, because deep down she knew that she was more than the shadows of her past. And maybe, just maybe, her story wasn't over yet. I never thought silence would be my shield, but sometimes silence becomes a weapon for the liars. The windows of my makeshift community center in D.C. overlooked the Pentagon courtyard. Yet that view brought no relief. Everything was too bright, too sterile. Walls lined with accolades, a clock ticking with military precision. Yet today, time felt warped. Memories I hadn't unpacked in years clawed their way back. Across from me sat Ethan Harris, his knees bouncing nervously. Suit, loosened tie, worn-out expression, like someone carrying a secret he couldn't keep inside. "I should have told you sooner," he said softly. "I should have spoken up back then. Honestly, I didn't think it mattered." My eyes fixed on him, sensing there was more beneath the surface. He looked like someone about to confess something huge. "She came to me right after you enlisted," Ethan Harris continued. "Chloe. She said you asked the school to hide your name from the alumni honors list, that you didn't want attention." I tilted my head, the weight of that revelation settling deep. "You didn't think that was weird?" He hesitated, guilt flickering in his eyes. "I did. But Chloe, she was always so sure, so composed. She told me she was protecting your wishes. She forwarded an email chain asking the school to remove your name, claiming it was for consistency, to keep your story straight since you'd left the Ivy League track." The words sliced through me like shards of glass. The narrative. Ethan Harris looked guilty, shame creeping across his face. "I didn't stop it. I just let it happen." I rose slowly, walking to the metal file cabinet behind me. My hand trembled as I rested it on the cold metal, controlling the rising rage. Inside, all I wanted was to scream. But my training, literally what I'd learned, taught me patience, observation, purpose. "She erased me," I whispered, "not from the dinner table or the party invites, from history itself." Ethan Harris's head bowed in shame. That's when a soft knock at the door broke the silence. And suddenly, everything hung in the balance. What's coming next? The truth waiting to be uncovered, or buried forever? Would I finally find my voice, or get lost again in the shadows of their lies? The story isn't over yet. Rebecca Cole stood alone in the dim glow of the reunion hall, shadows pooling beneath faded chandeliers. Her hands trembled as she wiped away a stray tear, the silence thick with unspoken stories. Outside, rain scented the air, a reminder of how long she'd quietly endured, feeling invisible in her own life. As she reached for her coat, her phone buzzed, a notification that made her pause. Heart pounding, she unlocked it and stared. A video, an anonymous sender. It flickered to life. A grainy clip from years ago, her graduation day. There she was, confidently holding her diploma, proud but small. Overlaid text whispered, "You mattered then, more than anyone knew." The rush of memories collided, her feelings of insignificance orchestrated by lies. In that moment, a shift occurred. The shadows inside her flickered with hope. She wasn't just a ghost of her past. She was reassembling her story, reclaiming her worth. Suddenly, the cold hall felt a little warmer. She straightened, a newfound resolve replacing the ache, knowing she was more than the silence that had once defined her. The room was heavy with silence, the kind that sinks deep and makes your stomach churn. Shadows from the dim chandeliers danced on faded walls, but my mind was louder. My hands trembled as I clutched the coat I never thought I'd wear here. This isn't about being invited. No, today is about surviving. Outside, the rain scented the air, cool, restless, relentless, just like the feeling in my chest. I reach for my phone. It buzzes. I hesitate, then unlock it. A notification. A video. From someone anonymous. My finger trembles as I tap it open. On the screen, grainy footage flashes. My graduation day. There I am, proud, confident, clutching my diploma. But it's just a fragment of who I was. That girl with hope, before the hollow silence took over. Overlaid text whispers, "You mattered then, more than anyone knew." My heart races. Memories flood back, feeling invisible, beating against the walls of expectations and rejection. It's a blow, but also a spark. Maybe I'm not just a ghost of my past. Maybe I can reclaim her. The shadows flicker, but now I see a flicker of hope. I straighten. A new resolve takes hold. I am more than the silence that once defined me. The cold hall isn't so cold anymore. There's heat in the truth I'm about to tell. But just as I gather my courage, the voice that breaks the silence. What comes next? I stood there, heart racing as I opened the folder. Inside, I pulled out a single photograph. It was me, in full-dress uniform, standing at NATO command. I was saluting, a silver star gleaming on my shoulder next to General Aubrey Clean. That day, I received a classified commendation, one no civilian had ever seen. I held the photo high, steady. The room fell into a hush. I didn't need applause. I just needed a moment of their attention. Earned, not demanded. As I lowered the photo, the silence thickened. A breath held tight in collective lungs. From the edge of the stage, Melissa gave a small nod. I stepped forward, my voice unwavering. "My name is Rebecca Cole." I paused, letting the name sink in. Class of 2003, first chair in orchestra, founder of the International Relations Club. Voted most likely to be a professor. That one didn't age well. A soft ripple of laughter broke the tension, tentative but real. I served because I believed in a country that didn't always believe in me. I didn't wear a name badge for approval. I wore one to remind me of my purpose. From my folder, I held up a thin packet. Copies of operation briefs with redacted code names, letters of commendation, the nomination record Melissa had uncovered. These are parts of a life lived beyond this room. Not glamorous, not loud, but real. I didn't look at Chloe, though I felt her presence like a vibration at the edge of my spine. Instead, I scanned the crowd, faces I once knew, students watching from the aisles, reporters hovering near the exits. "I won't name names," I said, my voice firm, "because this isn't about anyone else's story. It's about mine, about those who serve quietly, who show up not for attention, but because not showing up would mean someone else might pay the price." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. Some of us protect in silence. That doesn't make our stories invisible. Camera shutters clicked, capturing the moment. Someone near the front wiped at their eyes. "I'm not here for praise," I continued, my heart steadying. "I'm here to remind you that every story matters, even the ones whispered in the shadows." In that moment, I felt the warmth of recognition, the flicker of understanding. I was no longer just a ghost of my past. I was reclaiming my narrative, standing tall in the light of my truth. Tonight, I stood amid a sea of familiar faces, feeling more invisible than ever. The hum of conversations blended into a dull roar in my mind, each laugh, whisper, and gossip wrapping around me like a suffocating cloud. My heart pounded in my chest. Loud, relentless. I could feel my palms growing clammy, the weight of years slipping through my fingertips. Then, across the room, a flicker, a glance. Someone was watching me. Not just anyone, but someone from my past I never thought I'd see again. My breath hitched, my stomach twisted. I thought about approaching, saying something, anything. But then, a sharp, sarcastic laugh cut through the noise, scattering that fragile hope. I realized, this moment isn't over yet. But what will happen next? Will I find my voice? Or have I already faded into the background for good? The room seemed to tighten around me, the silent question echoing louder than any words. The night was heavy with unspoken feelings. Rebecca walked into the dim-lit room, her heartbeat pounding like a distant drum. Every step she took felt heavier than the last. The familiar faces she'd once known watched her from afar. Smiles added salt to her wounds, whispers like icy wind. She pulled out her phone, the screen flickering in the darkness, and hesitated. What if this moment was a mistake? The air around her was thick with old memories, social pressure, and doubt. Her hands trembled slightly, clutching the device as silence settled in. Then, out of nowhere, a message pinged. Who could it be? The question echoed loud in her mind, flooding her with a mix of hope and fear. Would this text change everything? Or was it proof that some things are better left behind? She stared at the screen, frozen. The story was just beginning. As Rebecca's eyes darted between the message and the crowd, her mind spun with possibilities. Could this be her shot at redemption? Or was it a sign to walk away? The tension built like a storm brewing overhead, the kind where tension hangs so thick you could cut it with a knife. Every nerve in her body screamed to run, to hide, to disappear into the shadows. But still, she stayed. Just then, the message glowed again. Short, simple, with a promise of what's to come. The next move was hers. Would she finally find her voice? Or would she walk away, haunted by what could have been? The room seemed to close in, waiting, and as the seconds stretched into eternity, she took a deep breath, ready to face her truth. What will happen next? The answer waits just beyond that text, in the quiet shadows of the night. That morning, the cafe was dead silent. The windows fogged up from the chill outside. The only sound was the steady hum of the espresso machine. I arrived early, ordered black coffee, and found a quiet corner booth by the window. Dressed in plain clothes, no uniform, no badge, just a regular person. Chloe showed up 10 minutes late, alone. She wore no makeup, her hair pulled back in a loose braid. Her eyes looked tired, but not like from lack of sleep. It was something deeper, like emotional wear and tear. She looked like someone who had stopped fighting, who'd given up pretending to win. Without asking, she sat directly across from me. For a long moment, we said nothing. The clink of ceramic cups and faint murmur of the baristas filled the space between us. Then, she slid a small velvet box across the table. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a faded photo, corners slightly worn. 2 girls, maybe 8 and 11, dressed in Halloween camouflage costumes, both saluting valiantly. One grinning wide, the other staring straight into the camera with pure seriousness. I asked softly, "You kept this?" She nodded. Almost tossed it out 6 times. But I couldn't. I looked at her. She wasn't acting. She wasn't creating a story. She said gently, "I spent 20 years trying to outrun your shadow." Her voice was calm, but I could hear the weight behind it. Turns out, I built that shadow myself. I stayed silent, letting her speak. "I thought if I was louder, more seen, I could catch up," she said. "But no matter what I did, there was always you. Quiet, steady, constant, and—" Her voice cracked. I hated how much I resented it, but I also admired it. Her fingers trembled as she reached for her coffee. She didn't lift it, just held it tight. "I didn't want you to disappear," she whispered. "I just didn't know how to exist next to you." For the first time in 20 years, I saw the sister I grew up with. Not the polished prosecutor, not the media strategist, just Chloe. The girl who'd crawl into my bunk during thunderstorms, whispering, "Don't leave first." I reached across the table and gently took her hand. Her breath hitched, like the weight of years finally lifting, just a little. There's a quiet magic in those early moments, the ones we don't talk about much. I think about Rebecca Cole, standing on that stage, her service blues spotless, her posture proud. But behind those medals and the calm exterior, I bet she's remembering that rainy day at her grandmother's house. Rebecca's fingers trace the worn fabric of her grandmother's quilt, feeling the faded embroidery beneath her fingertips. The scent of lavender lingers in her mind, a quiet whisper of simpler times. Sun filters through peeling curtains, casting a golden glow over a tiny kitchen. Her grandmother's gentle smile, the soft hum of a lullaby, the smell of warm cookies, those moments weren't grand. They were small, real, and rooted in feeling valued. That day, despite hardships, planted a seed within Rebecca: resilience. Even in silent shadows, even when she felt invisible at her high school reunion, those memories remind her that even the smallest gestures, a warm smile, a hug, a quiet reassurance, leave a lasting mark. So, when she stands proud on her day of honor, it's not just the medals shining in the sun. It's every quiet afternoon when her grandmother's kindness whispered, "You're enough." And maybe, just maybe, all those small moments of grace are what truly define her worth. I stepped up to the podium, heart racing, ready to share my truth. "I used to think silence was strength," I began, my voice steady but soft. "That serving meant fading into the background, but I've learned something different." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. We don't serve for applause, but sometimes it's nice to know we're not invisible. The applause came again, softer this time, more reflective. Turning to the president, I extended my hand. He shook it firmly, leaning in close, his voice low but clear. "You're not done yet, General." He mentioned a desk in the West Wing, but I chose a classroom in Fort Liberty instead. The lecture hall wasn't grand, just beige walls, scuffed floors, and the faint hum of aging ventilation. But to me, it was perfect. 30 cadets sat at attention, notebooks open, eyes alert. The nameplate on the podium read, Lieutenant Jenner R. Cole Rhett. But titles didn't matter now. I was there to teach, not to impress. Today's seminar was on ethical leadership in asymmetric environments. We tackled real-world dilemmas. "How do you lead when no one's watching?" I asked. One cadet, sharp freckles dusting her cheeks, raised her hand. "Ma'am, what do you do when the system works against you?" I met her gaze, feeling the weight of her question. "You lead anyway," I replied, "and you document everything." They laughed softly, but I could see they understood. These young women weren't here to play dress-up. They were preparing for the reality of pressure, failure, and quiet victories. I saw myself in all of them, hoping their paths would be easier, but no less courageous. Midway through the afternoon, a knock at the back caught my attention. It was Chloe, no makeup, just jeans and a navy blazer, holding a small camera bag. She gave a sheepish wave as I approached. "Hope I'm not interrupting," she said. "You're on campus?" I asked, surprised. "I'm working with a team on a docu-series, Women in Command. Thought I'd start where I should have years ago." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "That's a long way from podcast snark." She shrugged, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "People change." Before I could respond, Melissa appeared behind her, and the air shifted. The reunion of our pasts was unfolding, and I could feel the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. Each moment was a reminder of who we were and who we had become. The scent of rain lingered in the air, a reminder of the storms we had weathered together. Would we find the courage to embrace our stories, to redefine our worth? The answer lay in the connections we forged, the memories we cherished, and the strength we discovered within ourselves. She grinned, holding up a book mock-up titled Lessons from the Field. "Publishers are interested," she said, excitement bubbling in her voice. "They want co-authors. You in?" I glanced between my sister and my old classmate, both transformed by truths we never expected to confront. I nodded once. "Let's write it right." Back in the classroom, the cadets had gathered near the front. One held a large poster board drawn in vibrant colors featuring figures in uniform. In the center, my face was half shaded, half lit. At the top, in looping cursive, it read, "Our General." I swallowed hard, feeling a lump in my throat. "Thank you," I managed, my voice thick with emotion. Clearing my throat, I addressed the class. "Command isn't about shouting. It's about showing up when it's hardest, too." They nodded, scribbling notes, sitting a little straighter. As the session ended, I returned to my desk. A single red light blinked on the encrypted tablet in my briefcase. I opened it. Subject: Ghost Viper needs eyes. Request urgent cyber task force. High-level threat. Clearance code black. My heart raced, but I felt ready. I hadn't disappeared. I was simply doing my job where no one could see me. The hallway smelled like freshly varnished wood and printer ink, new yet familiar. The banners were maroon, just like they always had been, and the school's seal shimmered in gold on the wall near the entrance. The Hall of Legacy was modest, quiet, just a stretch of corridor lined with nameplates carved in bronze and framed photographs beside them. I stood near the back, hands clasped behind my uniformed back. This time, there was no stage, no ceremony, just a cluster of students in pressed blazers, a few faculty members in formal wear, and alumni lining the walls with quiet reverence. Chloe stood beside the podium, a single sheet of paper in her hands. She glanced up at me once, met my eyes, and then began. Her voice was steady, but now we choose to see her. The air thickened as I read the message, my heart racing. Ghost Viper? The name sent chills down my spine. A ghost from the past resurfacing at the worst possible moment. I glanced at my sister and my old classmate, their faces a mix of concern and curiosity. What did this mean for us? The weight of the decision loomed over me, and I could feel the tension crackling in the air. Would I step back into a world I thought I had left behind? The question hung heavy, urging me to choose my next move carefully. Rebecca stood at the edge of the crowd, her heart racing. The air was thick with anticipation, the scent of rain lingering outside, mixing with the faint rustle of leaves. She felt the weight of judgment pressing down on her, each whisper echoing her insecurities. This was her high school reunion, a place where memories clashed with the present. As she scanned the room, her eyes flicked to the looming doorway. The murmur of distant voices faded, and her heart pounded louder. Just then, she caught a glimpse of a familiar face, someone she thought she'd never see again, standing in the shadows. Her breath hitched, fists clenched. Was this the moment that would finally change everything? Or would she retreat into the silence she had always known? What would she do next? Not for the rank, not for the medals, but because of what she stood for when no one was watching. A pause. She's my sister, and more importantly, she's someone I've come to learn from. She stepped down. I nodded slightly, unsure of what else to do. Melissa was there too, in a navy dress and flats, holding a well-worn copy of our book manuscript. She'd flown in the night before, promising to keep things simple and boring. I had believed her until she surprised me with a quote from our book, now printed in the event program. Leadership doesn't echo in applause, it echoes in choices. The crowd shifted as a cover on the plaque was lifted. My name, my class year. The simple phrase beneath it, Rebecca Cole, integrity and silence. No titles, no decorations, just that. Faculty gave a short speech about conviction, about how real power comes not from being loud, but from being lasting. I barely heard it. My eyes drifted to the corner where 5 cadets stood in uniform, arms at their sides, proud and still. Melissa came up beside me as the crowd began to murmur again, snapping photos. "How do you feel?" she asked softly. I took a breath. "Not deep, just enough. It's not about being remembered," I said. "It's about making sure the right things are." She smiled and rested a hand on my shoulder. From behind us, a voice whispered, "She's the reason I applied." I turned slightly. One of the cadets, no older than 19, nudged her classmate. Her eyes were wide, her face earnest. I didn't say anything. Instead, I stepped back from the plaque. Let them take the photos they wanted. Let them speak the words I'd once been denied. Then I walked out, the sound of my footsteps absorbed by the polished floor. No music, no cameras clicking, just silence and meaning. And after years of silence, erasure, and quiet dignity, Rebecca's name was finally etched not just in bronze, but in memory. Would this be the moment she finally embraced her worth? Rebecca Cole stood before her former classmates, the air thick with tension. Once the girl they overlooked, she now radiated strength. The room, once filled with laughter and judgment, fell into a profound silence. As she began to speak, her voice steady, she shared her journey of resilience. Each word cut through the echoes of their past mockery. The flicker of understanding in their eyes ignited a spark of hope within her. "Sometimes it takes one person refusing to fade away to light the way for others," she said, pausing to let her message sink in. In that moment, Rebecca transformed from the invisible girl into a beacon of strength. She reclaimed her narrative, inspiring others to embrace their truths. Her story reminded us that justice, though delayed, can strike like thunder, clear, earned, and undeniable. When faced with injustice, quiet strength can make truth louder than any lie. After years of silence, Rebecca's name was finally etched not just in bronze, but in memory. Would this be the moment she embraced her worth?